Welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about audiobooks. Specifically, I wanted to talk about audiobooks that I read that were so good that I needed physical copies. I thought I should talk about this because within less than a month span, I read two audiobooks that were both ones that I had to have. So I'm going to talk about those two first, and then I will get into past years. So the first one that I read more recently is A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcourt. This was a pretty short audiobook, only about 5 hours or so. And this focuses on a queer Indigenous PhD student who is trying to write his first novel. A little bit meta. He has to go back to his small town and interview several people in preparation for this novel. So throughout it, you get bits about what it's like being queer and Indigenous in academia, but also what it's like to be queer in a small town. That's kind of the frame in which we're viewing these stories of the people that he is interviewing. I think most of them, if they weren't relatives, they were like very close to him somehow. He has connection to each of them. Throughout all of this, the book hits on a number of different themes. It's of course looking at Indigenous experience overall in a colonized place. It's looking at connection, family, his relationship with his mother, and that just the complexities that happen within a community. It also brings up issues like alcoholism in the prison industrial complex. So it ends up being more of like a community saga, if you can call it a saga, being so small. But it was just so beautiful. The way that Billy Ray Belcourt writes is just incredible. I actually tabbed the audiobook. Like, you can go through and like mark places, and of course it returned before I could actually get my hands on a physical copy. So I currently can't go back and mark those up, but maybe whenever the audiobook comes back around to me, I can do that. But this is definitely one that I want to reread and read physically. I will say I don't think that there are any books here that are light, so maybe this goes for everything. There were some pretty heavy topics, and one of the reasons that I want to read it physically is because I could feel myself like drifting away, just because one of the kind of things going on made me think of kind of other things personally. So there's definite potential content warnings and stuff like that. While I don't always articulate content warnings and stuff in videos, I try to keep my story graph reviews always updated with content warnings, and anything that I might miss, someone else on Storygraph probably put up. So that's always a really good place to check for content warnings for all of these, for basically anything. Pretty soon after that, I started The Skin and Its Girl by Sarah Cipher. This one I actually read on Spotify, which I had never used the audiobook function for that, and actually I think for a while either you couldn't speed them up, or maybe I just couldn't figure out how to speed them up on there. So I was really like not interested until I found one, and then was able to figure out the settings. This one was quite a bit longer than the other one. This one was probably like 13 hours or so on audiobook. It is a queer family saga. Our main character, Betty, was born with blue skin, and the story starts at her birth. She is narrating her life and intertwining it with kind of a lot of different things. She talks predominantly about the three women who raised her: her mother, her grandmother, and her great aunt. And she's telling this whole story at the grave of her great aunt, as she's trying to grapple with a really important life decision. As she's telling the story of these three women and herself, she's also talking about the family's past and what's happening and has happened in Palestine, and how that impacts each of them. And also quite a bit of kind of myth or folklore around the family, some of which may have been passed down, but a lot of which was kind of created by the aunt. The aunt spoke largely kind of in these fables. So she, of course, tells some of the fables, but they also get woven into the book in really beautiful ways. So you have a mix of these different people stories, weaving in like fact and fiction, as well as time. So there's just a lot of really cool stuff going on. And I think I just really love a queer family saga. And this is just another one with really beautiful poetic writing. I'm super excited to reread both of these and absolutely tab them all up. And the next book that I'm going to talk about, I did get the opportunity to reread and tab up. And that is Summer Suns by Lee Mandello, which I have talked about doing a standalone video for and just haven't because life is chaos. But I read this at the beginning of 2022. I don't know what time is. I read this at the beginning of a year and it was amazing. Caveat though, I'm not sure that I would actually recommend the audiobook, because the narrator has a really like intermittent a very fake southern accent that just I kind of hated. I actually started off the audiobook irritated because of that, and kind of, I think, more irritated at the main character than I would have been if I had just been reading it. So despite me not really liking the narrator, I fucking adored this story. This focuses on Andrew, who was supposed to move in with his best friend Eddie back near their hometown so that they could both go to grad school. Eddie moved up there before Andrew was able to, and right before he's supposed to move back, Eddie dies by apparent suicide. The book opens up with Andrew being followed around by Eddie's ghost as he is moving back to that town in order to start grad school. Andrew's not convinced that this was actually suicide, so he's very suspicious of everyone. He starts to get to know Eddie's group of friends that he didn't really know very much about, as well as the classmates and teachers. So he's trying to kind of unravel this murder mystery while also being attached to this ghost, and just generally being extremely unwell. The poor man is like not even really clean at all throughout this book. It's a very like dirty, sticky, gritty. Like the atmosphere of the book feels like a hot, uncomfortable, humid summer in the South. So it's very atmospheric. The characters are very, very messy. And I think the mystery is really compelling. I didn't guess what happened. When my partner was reading it, they did, but they've also read more mystery stuff than I have. But it is absolutely brilliant. There are so many layers. I mean, there's kind of the dark academia aspect and the Southern Gothic aspect, and I think, I don't want to say too much specifically because reasons, but I think that the themes of both of those things intermingle in a really cool way. Like I said, very atmospheric, so the writing is great. I mean, you can see all of the things, and this is looking at thematic details, things about the haunting. I was really trying to like dissect very specific thematic things. And all the blue tabs is where it's very gay. And at the beginning of the story, the main character doesn't really realize it. I feel like that's not a spoiler. So yeah, gay, messy ghosts, and also drag racing, like car drag racing, not drag racing. Then I have the last adult book that I'm going to talk about, which is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. Initially, I didn't really know if I was going to like it. A Western is like usually not really my vibe, but queer librarians in the Wild West trying to undermine fascists is just really cool, which that's basically the premise of this. This focuses on a character who's running away after her lover was sentenced to death, and she ends up finding a lot more than she expected when she snuck into the wagon of the librarians that were passing by. Now I have a few that are young adult as well. The most recent of these is A Million Quiet Revolutions by Robin Gao. This is told in verse, so it's all poetry. This is a T for T romance between two trans men who are kind of trying to connect with queer history via the parts of history that aren't really, I guess, talked about in terms of queer representation. Specifically, one of them is super into the Revolutionary War, and so they kind of look into people who went off as soldiers who may have been trans. It speaks in a lot of really beautiful ways about queer people seeing themselves or kind of making themselves into history. It also speaks really beautifully to transness and how that's going to be different from person to person, and just trans love. It's incredible. And I was a little bit worried at first about this because the Revolutionary War is like the thing that they're talking about, and they do actually contend with some of the issues around that, especially since one of the characters is Puerto Rican. They don't delve into it a ton, which I don't think would be expected really in a YA book in verse, but they do kind of address it and kind of talk about how that is complicated. Another young adult book that I listened to and then bought was Between Perfect and Real. This caught my attention because it is Shakespeare. The main character is going to be in a production of Romeo and Juliet and is cast as kind of a non-traditional, like, woman Romeo, but he's actually a trans man. So he's dealing with kind of the idea of coming out to kind of the public in general, to his parents, to his girlfriend. And it looks, I think, in a really complex way about kind of just the nature of all that. It's been a while since I've read it, but I really enjoyed it. At the end, I think, was maybe rushed, but I still had a lot of really strong feelings about it as a whole, about how he's able to kind of find community in the midst of all this, as well as kind of how he navigates kind of coming out to people and things like that. I feel like the author was able to paint something that was really realistic. So this one was really good. And then finally, I have Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. This was probably the first one that I read and then needed as a physical book. If it wasn't this one, it was Upright Woman Wanted. I read them at very similar times, I think in 2020. And this focuses on a trans guy who had someone at his school post a bunch of pictures of him when he was younger, put out his dead name. He is very upset, but he thinks he knows who did it. So naturally, he decides to get revenge by catfishing this person. And obviously things go awry. This is very messy, queer. They also talk some about kind of figuring out your identity and exploring it, even, after you've kind of come to one conclusion. So he's looking at the possibility of being a demi-boy. There's also discussion of his relationship with his parents. So there are a lot of things on the periphery that were really interesting, as well as the catfish situation. I won't say too much about all of it, but I think that the romantic relationship component really spoke to me very deeply. And especially, I think the fact that he did navigate it initially so poorly, because it's very realistic to have no idea what you're doing, I think. So these are the books that I have read as audiobooks and love them enough to get a copy. I wanted to say too, with all of these, the majority of them I've also bought and really enjoyed another book by the author. with Upright Women Wanted. I also read and enjoyed American Hippo, and actually this one I also think I read on audiobook, but I can't remember if I already had the physical copy. It is a wild romp. It's really good if you're looking for something that really feels like kind of an action-packed Western sort of thing. I think I liked Upright Women Wanted more, but I still really enjoyed both of them. Then we have Lee Mandello, and I read Feed Them Silence earlier this year, and I really liked it. I think that they wrote it really well. It is very dark. It's a climate fiction that focuses on a scientist who is studying some of the last remaining wild wolves by kind of engaging with this technology that literally puts her brain into the wolves. And she becomes very deeply entwined with these wolves as the relationship with her wife is like crumbling. So you have these juxtaposing each other while kind of the world is falling apart. So it's the darker end of climate fiction, but it's really well written. And then finally, from Robin Gao, I also read Dear Mothman, which is a middle grade book told mostly in letters and all in verse, that focuses on an autistic trans boy who just lost his best friend and is writing to Mothman in order to find Mothman, but also to kind of process a lot of his different emotions. So you kind of see him go through the grieving process. It was really beautiful, and if I talk about it anymore, I will start crying. But yes, I'm very excited to read more from Robin Gao. And with the rest of these, I haven't read other books by them, but I do have an arc of Lark and Cassim Start a Revolution. I am a bookseller, so the arcs are just kind of in there. As wasn't one that I received in the mail or anything. I intended to read it several times this year and just haven't, but I'm really looking forward to it. I know that they've recently put out an adult book. They have several kids books. I really want to read all of them. I just haven't yet. Then the other 3 books, I don't have anything else by. They're the authors at this point, but both Ray Stove and Billy Ray Belcourt, I have books that I want to get by them, and I know specifically, and I have yet to look into Sarah Cipher because I kind of listened to this more or less on a whim. I basically just knew that it was queer and Palestinian, so I really want to look into more of her works. And with Billy Ray Belcourt, he's just been on my TBR forever, so I have several other books that are on my radar that I'd like to get. So that's it for this video. Tell me in the comments about some of your favorite audiobooks, and thank you all so much for watching. Bye.